shadowing us, or are we just going through a couple of the slides?
You've got. Let me ask you question one. In terms of ranking, where does the Australian market sit in the world?
Ta-da!
Just like we prepared.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really interesting point to start on, and obviously where we're at with the international market. And I think the strength of Australian music in the industry has been this global outlook. And I think there's organisations like APRA, this one.
Hi.
Adam. And just our kind of the innovation, the creativity, there's something in the water from a music point of view as well that's allowing us to grow. And I think it's really exciting to see this number and the ranking kind of move, considering we're so teeny tiny.
And population of Australia is?
22 million. Rowan, 22? 24 million?
Over 20, everyone.
To give you a really good example, the population is 24 million and the APRA membership base, which is songwriters, is 94,000. If you compare that to PRS in the UK, their membership base is around 113,000. So the percentage there is quite high. So the level of people that are actively doing music is huge.
And we've got a lot of initiatives from local, state, federal, which is, finally fantastic, because it's taken us a while to get that backing. But the state orgs, things like Music New South Wales, they're providing a lot of free educational workshops for independent artists, signed artists, bedroom artists, anyone that wants to create music, just to navigate the landscape, to put out new music. And I think that's a testament of those numbers.
How important is getting international to Australian artists? Getting out of Australia, how important is that as a strategic step in the consumer journey, also the artist journey?
Huge. Obviously, something prepared next. Obviously, talking about the whole distribution-based model, aggregation, allowing a lot of this music to be out there, the growth of streaming, digital. We've also got organisations which are backed by APRA called Sounds Australia that are doing around 26 events around the world, just showcasing Australian music, providing those pathways and options to explore. And I think we're such a tight-knit little community that we've got all each other's backs, and we really have kind of lifted that live and international game substantially in the last couple of years. Nice.
From a songwriting point of view, how important is that international revenue, given you've got a relatively small population, obviously highly engaged?
Yeah, I mean, for APRA as a business, it's probably the one area that's had continual growth over, say, 10 years. So it's incredibly important to us. And for our global initiatives in particular, we have offices in London, LA and Nashville. I'm based in London, under our member relations department. So that role is purely to look after the members that are based, for me, within the UK and Europe. And looking to at how they can work with the local market when they're in territory. So if we have a very big international success, it obviously drives the amount of members that are both looking to join the organisation, but also it piques interest in other activities that we do, like our Song Hubs initiative, which is a global songwriting camp that we run all over the world. Having that initiative for us is incredibly important, and it's helped launch the careers of people like Troye Sivan and TK Maidza and many, many, many other songwriters. So we're kind of looking at that position and how we can really help our perception internationally, but then help that locally as well.
I thought it was nice of the UK to take an Australian songwriter for our Eurovision entry this year. I thought it's,
Why are we in Eurovision? Yeah. The whole conversation.
Aren't you guys in it too? Anyway. Right, next slide. What's the question next? The answer is 30%, but what's the question?
Yeah, so when we were talking about just a couple of key trends, points of interest that we were just discussing over lunch, I think that the growth of the independent sector, especially for someone who works with a lot of independent artists from a digital agency capacity, just the growth of the numbers of the independent sector from a revenue point of view is just really impressive. And again, that is that whole DIY culture. We've also got a great rise in a lot of independent labels that are doing really, really well. So when you're looking at companies like Future Classic, which is a home flume. You've got things like Unify, which is North Lane. Yeah, it's just these independent labels are really just kind of taking the music to the world stage and doing it very, very successfully. And that has kind of driven some of these powerful numbers in the independent sector and showing some increasingly impressive results.
Interesting. And how's that hitting charts in the Australian market? The charts obviously...
Sorry,
Right,
that was a bit loud.
there are issues with the Aussie chart at the moment, right?
Like I've got to, I have to say this very politically correct. I think we really need to look at how we're charting music to toe the line. For us, we look at our chart and back home, and it's pretty much compilations. Ed Sheeran will be in there for the whole year plus the next year.
That guy gets everywhere.
He's an amazing musician, but obviously it's just the, the presence of those commercial-based artists and compilations in our chart that we're not seeing the results really for some of these independent or Australian artists that are coming through. So we rely heavily on, streaming viral, iTunes charts, things like the independent air charts as well. And again, we're pretty good in kind of shining a light on those artists that are doing particularly well. So this week, it should have dropped today actually, hoping we're having a new emerging artist called Hockey Dad enter the charts, the ARIA chart. So we haven't had an artist of that level enter the charts in so long outside of a genre like, hip hop, like with the AB Original crew, or even heavier through the kind of unified crew. So it's to see a rock duo who are emerging to hit the ARIA charts, it's like, hell yeah, that's great. And I think we just have to be very mindful of the clogginess of ARIAs.
Cool.
Don't record this.
This is my blackmail material for any future favours I need in Australia.
Shall I move on?
Let's.
What's this one?
This is APRA AMCOS revenue, 44% of it which comes through digital channels. Adam, do you want to chat us through this one?
Oh, no, that's digital channels in general.
Yeah. So this is just a couple of stats to kind of look at landscape. So with 44% being that of digital, obviously the increase in growth in streaming revenue is quite impressive as well, but that's just the nature of the beast around the world, in my opinion. It's only going to increase and, it's good to see. So I think the other two really interesting points here, and again, I'm not going to spend too much time on my independent bandwagon, but it's really great to see that majority of these new releases coming through are in fact new releases. So there's a hell of a lot of music coming through our market, and there's a very big focal point on creating new releases, very track-based, very supportive. From a release perspective, we then got a very healthy East Coast touring route. We've got some great grants coming through, and we've got a lot of showcasing opportunities. And the companies like Sounds Australia that are allowing the artists to export their music overseas are doing a great job in helping them to go when is the right time to hit the international market.
Fantastic. So we talked a lot about getting out of Australia. For bands looking to come in the last 2 minutes, best bits of advice for the first time to get to Australia?
It's really big. It's a really, really big country.
With not a lot of people.
It's very hard to move around. I think if you're going there to tour, you have to be very practical in the way that you approach it. And obviously the East Coast run, as Van mentioned, is essentially the easiest way to do it. So going from Brisbane down through to Sydney and then down into Melbourne. Maybe put that map back up.
It's so accurate too.
So but I think the one sector that's really growing in Australia and is probably the most exciting thing on the live side is the regional touring market. The number of regional festivals that are popping up all over the place is kind of the growth area at the moment. So you will see more opportunities in the future for those that are wanting to go out there and explore it.
Cool. Best bit of advice, Van, before someone goes to Australia, how do they make a presence? Can you do it just digitally, or do you need to be in territory?
I just think you need to reach out to someone locally, because we're all pretty much willing to help. And I think that, we're everywhere, as you could probably tell. We're not shy on a flight, or, we're not shy on attending a conference. So just reach out. Someone knows someone within the industry, and I think that having that network on ground and that community essence will allow you to understand how to work a market like Australia. We don't have a lot of radio, we don't have a lot of media outlets, we're pretty small when it comes to streaming. Thankfully Amazon just arrived, but again we're quite green on how big we can be to start with. And then I think radio stations like Triple J, if anyone's heard of that or hasn't heard of that, there's some amazing points that can help you break the market, but I think you just pick up the phone or email someone in Australia or ask Chris Carey to just to kind of point in the right direction of all the Australians that he knows that's pretty much filled the stage, right? But yeah, it's just everyone's willing to help, and I think that there's, you know, everything from emerging through to known artists, there's a destination for all music.
Perfect. I mean, I can definitely vouch for that. Roxanne, go on, go for one.
Having recently gone through the fun of securing an O1 visa from America,
Ooh.
do you know what it would be like for Australia?
So the question is, what kind of visas required for Australia?
I don't know, that's your question.
No, not really.
That's not in the slides.
No, I know, but I want to go to another really good point after that question.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, all I can really say is it's very difficult. Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite expensive too.
I guess it is also a topic of discussion as a plus side to Brexit, that with the UK with the UK and Australia, that they're trying to develop and strengthen the relationship. So one of the topics of discussion, obviously, is immigration for those that live in the UK. That is, but yeah, it just in a general level, it's quite difficult.
Perfect. Last point, Van, go on.
Well, I just really want to raise this slide because it's very much a passion point. I pretty much power one of the Women in Music chapters in Australia, and I think it's a very topical conversation, you know, globally, and there's a lot of spotlights. But in particular, with where we're standing from industry base, we have a very great organisation called AIM, which is pretty much the artist managers group, and they're empowering women, and we're nearly on parity with when it comes to women managers, which I think is a really positive point in the industry. I think also we're getting there from a live conversation, but it is pretty bad at the moment with our festival scene. That with Splendour in the Grass in 2017, like looking at the top billing, there was only 4, you know, artists with women that were actually noted and promoted in the top lineup. So this is something that all the festivals are eyeballing, the media is across, and I think it's a very much of a global conversation about trying to make sure that these bills have some kind of balance in how women are being represented. And then, yeah, and APRA is doing a number of initiatives to actually increase the number of women from a songwriting point of view, and I think that the 1 in 5 is a really good marker that they're eyeballing to increase as well.
Yeah, I think ours is our membership base, I think, is about 22% female. So any initiative that we're going to run, well, we have run in the last couple of years, like the songwriting camp that I mentioned before, we have to have 40% female attendees at it. Now, the first question from that is, why isn't it 50-50? The reason why it isn't 50-50 is that because of the low percentage in terms of our female membership, but also the submissions that we get back in is 90% male. And that's on the initial submission. So we then have to go back out, and for us it's all about encouragement and education and making sure that there's, you know, an even spread as best we can.
And you're doing the same across committees from an APRA point of view as well, right?
Yeah, and internally as well.
Yeah. And that's something that they're looking to increase. It's like 30% of boards at the moment are held by women, so that number needs to increase. But we're seeing, you know, we've got 350 odd members in Women in Music, and we're running kind of a lot of empowerment and courses to kind of help career development. So we actually get past the support level, marketing PR level, and into more of the board level as well.
Fantastic. On which note, guys, thank you very much for stepping into this. Much appreciated.
Guys, thank you.